So tell me, if somebody has a beautiful home, a loving husband, growing children, financial security, and even a grandchild on the way, why would they still feel trapped? Recently, one of my clients asked me a question that I think millions of people secretly ask themselves. She said, I know I should be grateful for my life, so why do I still feel like something is missing? She came to me feeling incredibly stuck and wanting to leave her marriage and find deeper passion for life and a partner. This actually is a very interesting case study because on the surface, her life looked exactly like the kind of life many people spend decades trying to create. She's this gorgeous, vibrant woman in her 50s. She has a wonderful lifestyle. She travels. She has fabulous relationships with her children and the excitement of this grandchild on the way too. Her husband is a genuinely good man and one of her closest friends. And therefore, by most people's standards, she's done really well. And yet beneath all of that was a feeling she couldn't shake. It's not even unhappiness. It's not a crisis. Just a quiet knowing that there was more life inside of her than she was currently living. She felt drawn towards greater freedom, greater independence, more self-expression, more aliveness. And part of her wondered whether there was another chapter waiting for her, a chapter that she has never fully allowed herself to explore. But every time she felt herself moving towards it, something would pull her back. Fear, guilt, doubt, questions like, what if I get this wrong? Or what if I hurt people? Or what if I'm being selfish? What if I leave something good and discover I was chasing a fantasy? And perhaps the biggest question of all, what if it's too late? The average self-development person would probably look at her life and think, she's done so well, she should be happy. But that's exactly what makes this case study so interesting. Because I don't think the real story is, should I leave my marriage? That's a surface story. The deeper story is, why do people spend decades building a life that looks so good on paper but doesn't fully express who they are? Or perhaps, at what point do we stop being loyal to the life we've built and start being loyal to ourselves? And that's where my attention goes, because millions of people are living some version of this, not necessarily in marriage, in careers, friendships, businesses, identities. What fascinates me most about this client is she doesn't appear unhappy. She appears unfinished. That's very different. Most people think transformation happens because life is terrible, but often the transformation happens because life is good, and yet something inside you keeps whispering, there has to be more than this. That becomes very difficult to explain, because when all the boxes are ticked, most often people feel guilty for wanting more. The interesting tension is this: she isn't trying to escape pain. She's trying to answer a calling, and those are completely different motivations. The issue was never really the marriage. It wasn't even about really finding another relationship. From my perspective, I start asking, what was she trying to protect? Because anxiety, hesitation, and stuckness are not usually the root issue. They're usually expressions of deeper subconscious programs. The question is, what are they attempting to protect? When I look at her situation, I see someone protecting security, identity, being the good person, being the good wife, being the responsible one, being the grateful one, being the woman who doesn't hurt people. And now we're getting somewhere. Because when I work with her subconscious mind, I don't try and help her make a decision. I look at the beliefs underneath that decision. She needs to embody, I trust myself to create a deeply fulfilling life. My authentic expression enriches my life and the lives of others. I am safe and supported being fully myself. Because without those beliefs, every option feels dangerous. And now the deeper question becomes, what would happen if she chose herself? Not practically, emotionally. Maybe guilt, judgment, rejection, disappointment, uncertainty, and the possibility of being misunderstood. Then suddenly the issue is not about marriage. The issue is about permission to be more, permission to change, permission to outgrow an identity, permission to honor what feels true. Because I think the deeper fear might be, what if I honor myself and everybody doesn't understand? And that is often the moment people discover whether they've been living for authenticity or approval. Many of you may recognize yourself here: the good daughter, the good wife, the good employee, the good friend, the good person, the person who spent years making sure everybody else was comfortable, and somewhere along the way slowly became disconnected from themselves. Now here's what I find really interesting. She told me she fears rejection and judgment. She fears getting it wrong. She fears hurting people. She fears financial insecurity. And those are all valid fears, but they all point to something deeper: the fear of disappointing the identity she's spent decades maintaining. The fear of no longer being who everyone expects her to be. The fear of stepping outside the role that has kept her safe for so long. Which is why I don't think she's actually afraid of leaving. I think she's afraid of fully living. Or perhaps she's afraid of leaving behind the person who she spent decades being. Because certainty feels safe. The marriage may be familiar, the financial situation may be familiar, the identity may be familiar, the role may be familiar. The future may even be predictable. And human beings often choose familiarity over aliveness because certainty feels safe. But your true self isn't asking, how do I keep everybody comfortable? The true self is asking, what is true? Those are two very different questions. And this is the killer insight. Her current formula looks something like this: desire, guilt, stuckness. She knows what she wants, or at least she knows the direction she's being pulled. And then guilt arrives, and nothing changes. And that cycle repeats. Which brings me to my final question. What if the thing that's keeping you stuck isn't fear of failure? What if it's the fear of fully living? Because this conversation is less about marriage, less about psychology, and more about the cost of abandoning yourself. And that's a much deeper question. Let's explore that here.